to, so do it. We are still here, we're still a strong people, and the fact that we're still finding things in this area is just fascinating.
It's kind of like a beginning to this type of work. Okay,
We are out at South Camp on the Siksika Nation, working in partnership with Old Sun Community College to excavate this archaeological site, which is actually called EEPF 54. It's a very technical name there. We're working with Kent to get a Blackfoot name for it. Yeah.
At one point in time, the river could have came around through there.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Okay. Hello, my name is Kent, a young man. I'm from the Siksika Nation. I belong to the Aggressive People Clan. For the longest time, archaeologists, they go by theories and how they're trained and how they study. Sometimes I think they forget about there's actual people still living today that are connected to these artifacts that they're finding as they're doing their work, digging up our history.
How's the mapping going, guys? Archaeology as a discipline has a very colonial history. It does. In the past, archaeology has been used to subjugate Indigenous peoples, much like many other things, right? I think even when I was still in school, especially my undergrad, stuff like this didn't enter the conversation yet, right? And it wasn't that long ago. I asked Kent and all the elders what they thought it was. All of the elders and Kent said, no, this isn't a sweat, and here's why it's not a sweat. So we have something in archaeology we call Indigenous archaeology, and it's not that you have to be Indigenous to do it. But it's really the idea that we are trying to do archaeology that is with, for, and by First Nations or other Indigenous communities. We're just listening to what they think is the right way to do it. So we started our excavations with attending the Beaver Bundle opening ceremony, which was a fantastic learning experience for all of us, but also was what our partners on the nation said was the right thing to do, that they would pray for us, pray for the work, pray for the ancestors, before we ever stuck a shovel in the ground. We've also been having elders out every week to speak with us, to tell us stories about the places around on the landscape.
Traditionally in archaeology, you look at something from a very scientific, this is how this happened kind of way, and you don't really think about the people who are still living here today and how these are their ancestors.
When these archaeologists get that context and that background, it helps them to have a more real understanding of the work that they're doing within Siksika, the land of the Blackfoot people.
When we know that this is, we're near Treaty Flats, we're where Crowfoot camped. We are at this really important place in the Blackfoot landscape that the elders can tell us about. And then we can show that archaeologically as well, that this was an important place for those 4,000 years of time depth that we've got here.
Our stories go back a long way. Our teachings embedded through our ceremonial ways amongst the Siksika, it's explained in our stories and our origin stories of how projectile points came to be. And there's a timeline to all these. Seeing these artifacts being found in the work that archaeologists do, they put dates to these artifacts as they find them. And that kind of tells me how close our stories stayed intact to how things were given to our people hundreds and thousands of years ago. Any artifacts you're finding in that?
They said they pulled a little bit of bone out of it, so we might be able to radiocarbon date it, which would be great.
Nice.
That one probably dates around 3,000 years ago, so potentially even 3,500 years ago. That's so far the oldest definitive occupation we've got at this site is 3,500 years. So now we're working with the Blackfoot to interpret their own history in really a culturally familiar way.
It helps to give a fuller understanding to archaeologists. And when our people learn that process of archaeology, it strengthens our connection to this place.
It just makes my heart feel full, like just holding these artifacts and seeing them firsthand, and also just sharing them with the elders in the community. They can feel that connection with these artifacts, and I can feel it myself.
By seeing these artifacts, it's helping us to continue to see the importance of our stories today and then to preserve them and teach them to the future.